The city of Budенnovsk in the Stavropol Rim area, subjected to the act of political terrorism, is not liberated completely from the Dudaev gunmen yet. They continue to blockade the local hospital where, according to the latest information, up to 1,000 hostages are being held. But this figure is not precise. There's no reliable information about the number of casualties of yesterday's criminal barrage in the city, where they shot people in cold blood, ran them over with cars and set fire to homes. Supposedly, there are tens of killed and injured people. The majority of gunmen have been pushed out of the city and blockaded on the territory of the Stavropol Rim area. Especially for the program Time, the correspondent of the Stavropol television, Roman Perevizentsev, provided a report who managed not just to record the tragic events, but speak with those who were among hostages. Some hostages are taken right off the street. From the hospital personnel, hostages, how many? Have they killed anyone? No, not yet. And what about the military personnel taken there? Well, on the third story, there was a patient whom we had time to operate. And they are alive. And the rest on the territory of the hospital, there were military executed? Yes, they were executed. How many? I don't know. They're lying in the yard. Nurses are in a panic. We have no medications. They raided our entire supply and took all our medications and all the narcotic substances in storage. They took everything immediately. That was the first thing. The children are in the basement. They were taken down immediately in from the children's ward. They came in and said, give us the children, and they took them into the basement. Which children? The sick children from the children's ward. Little ones. How many children are there? The entire children's ward. Well, tell us how many. Approximately 80 or 100? No, they were around 30. How many hostages in all, considering the personnel, the entire hospital? A tragedy. This is how one may briefly describe the second day of events in Budенnovsк. The tragedy which befell the Stavropolian city resounded with pain and indignation in the entire world. In brief, I'll remind you, yesterday at 12 o'clock during the day, two KAMAZ trucks loaded ostensibly with coffins, passing controlled pass points, barged into the city. The group of gunmen of about 70 or 80 scattered along the central streets. Some of them fired at the administration, others moved to the market, the third attacked the division of the militia. From the first seconds, there were casualties. Everyone get to your homes. Don't allow any people access to the hospital. They're setting up their positions there. You can see them. There's the hospital. From which side should we approach to clear it, to blockade it? Over there, the river Kuma passes. Don't go there. It's about 30 meters away. According to verified information, officially there were 20 people killed, that's the record, and 59 injured. 8 terrorists have been annihilated, but that's officially. Having taken hostages, varying figures of 500 to 1,000, the gunmen seized the Central Regional Hospital. 5 physicians who gave blood to the wounded brother of the leader of the gang related that in the yard, the wounded military prisoners were shot. When we brought these 5 men, their leader said, tell us everything that's happening here, all about your operation, and don't conceal anything. They were laughing. The television was on showing the news. They were laughing. 40 hostages, and there are 40 hostages, and they were 20. How are they treating the hostages? For now, well, until the brother of the commander dies. Do they have an injury? Yes, the brother of the commander was injured, and he underwent surgery. What was the nature of the injury? Chest wound, lung, and leg. What do they threaten to do if he dies? First of all, they'll execute all the doctors, basically. And 10 hostages each for each one of them, injured or killed 10 hostages. About the process of talks, the press is given no information, and all the rest of the official information is strictly controlled. There's every basis to expect escalation of events in the near future. According to the latest reports, the terrorists have placed mines in the Budенnovsк hospital, and at the talks, which are in their second day, terrorists have submitted a new demand. They want to hold a press conference. Representatives of the federal organs of power in principle are prepared to organize a meeting with the press with guarantee of the complete safety of journalists. And our journalists, our film crews, are on site 24 hours a day in Budенnovsк. About events in the city, video material, especially for the program Time, was reported by the correspondents of Pyatigorsk TV. Several hours ago, the film crew of Pyatigorsk Television, having spent 2 sleepless days and nights in Budенновск, returned home. Today in Budенnovsк, with the leader of the gang, as Shamil Vasayev, the first successful attempt at dialogues took place, which occurred without bloodshed. When the meeting was over, the members of the delegation were surrounded by local residents, relatives and friends who were asking about the fate of several hundreds of hostages who were in the hospital complex building, and also the results of the dialogues. You are behaving extremely bravely in this situation. We're very grateful to you, the local population, for your restraint and calmness. But we would implore you not to create any difficulties. We understand that it's very hard for you. We understand that we're all bearing an intense grief, but let us all be brave and give us an opportunity to work calmly in a stable manner to reach the most wise outcome. Setting several conditions, the Chechen extremists permitted local authorities to organize delivery of foods for the city residents whom they are holding. To ensure their own security, the gunmen also made several demands: to cease the helicopter flights over the hospital building, that irritates them, and no bombing. Otherwise, for every violation of the ultimatum, 10 hostages will be shot or the core will be blown up. Literally, a few minutes after the members of the delegation left from the hospital, 5 medical workers were released with the compulsory condition of their return. This was done in order to intimidate the local residents. The situation in Budенnovsк remains tense. In this connection, today on Rim television, aired live was an appeal by the Chechen diaspora of Stavropol Rim area, urging the terrorists to come to their senses and cease the illegal actions. Andrei Verdokililov, Tatiana Ringina, Alexander Konovalov, especially for the program time from Budенnovsк. From the site of the tragedy, reports about the occurrences our agency receives ceaselessly. In Budенnovsк and adjacent areas, there are currently 5 film crews from the Information Television Agency. More than 50 correspondents and editors are involved in reporting and editing materials, and this work is underway even while our program is on the air. The television station of the Stavropol Rim area is on the line. We've received information. The mayor of the city, you may mention it after you've discussed it, he has said that, in essence, the city internal affairs of our city has insufficient resources to provide protection for all the major industrial objects and the chemical industry. Therefore, they ask for help with armaments because the gunmen are well armed with grenade launchers. Now, are your operators ready to transmit? Yes. Our official appeal is ready and we're on standby. We're ready as well. We'll transmit it. The chairman of the Rim State Duma of the Stavropol Rim area, Vangen Zerenkov. Chechen gunmen are shooting our children, running over our mothers with their vehicles, abusing hostages, the injured and sick. We consider it extremely necessary, and we demand that the Stavropol Rim area immediately be given the special border status with a special manner of resettlement, and on the entire territory of the Stavropol Rim area to declare a day of mourning. According to the last information the chairman of the Stavropol State Duma received from the headquarters, in the town of Blagodarny, the verified number of hostages is 2,000. Currently, in Budенnovsк, various versions are submitted for the reasons for the gunmen attack. Law enforcement organs presume that the Chechen gunmen wanted to break through to the major polymer chemical plant and conduct a terrorist act there. This could have caused serious detriment to the ecological situation in the region. It's also not excluded that the gunmen who attempted to attack the close-by airplane and helicopter regiment wanted to seize a helicopter to provide for the escape of Jahar Dudayev. No matter what the purposes of the gunmen were, it's extremely clear that this terrorist act was pre-planned and meticulously prepared. This was confirmed by the Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs, Evgeny Abramov. The behavior of the criminals is outside the realm of common sense. Most likely they are in some sort of a narcotic state, said the Deputy Minister in an interview to our correspondent. He spoke of the plans of the law enforcement organs to free the hostages. The decision about further action, I think, will be made collectively with a thorough analysis of the entire situation currently in Budенnovsк. Of course, I think that all possibilities will be examined and sought for peaceful talks. I know that currently these possibilities are being sought foremost so that the hostages and peaceful people who are in the hospital would not suffer. Just now our correspondent brought a report from the operative headquarters of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the on-duty department of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Russia. Here operational information is received from Budennovsk, which 1 hour before our program was being aired was still extremely alarming. The situation as of today is extremely complicated. We may say that by evening it even intensified. On the territory of the city, there are several hubs of armed resistance which flared up. That was in the process of the work launched by the law enforcement services to free the city. A smooth, detailed check of all the residential, non-residential buildings is underway to discover any weapons or ammunition or explosive substances. Some things have been confiscated, including a grenade launcher and a night vision aiming device. Clashes occurred with a group of gunmen. Currently, 3 of them have been imprisoned, and somewhere around 60 people are providing armed resistance, but they are blockaded and an operation is underway to detain and disarm them. The opposition of the gunmen is revealed by the fact that they didn't even accept food for the women and children who are the sick ones among the hostages. In the process of combing the site, 15 suspects were detained under investigation and 3 gunmen have been definitely imprisoned just recently. Hamat Kurbanov, who calls himself the Dudayev representative in Moscow and detained Wednesday evening by the Regional Department on Organized Crime employees, was released today. According to Itartas, at the time he was detained, he was charged with providing intentional false information about events in Budенnovsk. Together with the Ministry of Internal Affairs dealing with the tragedy in Budennovsk is the Security Service of Russia. The head of the public communications of the FSB, Alexander Mikhailov, gave an interview to our correspondent. Alexander Georgievich, what is the situation in Budенnovsk at this hour? As I was told in the regional Stavropol Department of Federal Security, the situation remains complicated. The gunmen are behaving quite aggressively. Are the gangsters agreeing to talks? Are their demands relaxing in the process of the dialogues, or is it too premature to speak about this? I think it would be premature not only today to speak of it, but for several days, because the demands which were submitted are of an ultimatum and rigid nature. Many analysts are inclined to see in this incident the beginning of a partisan war, which was spoken of so much by the Chechens and threatened. What is your prediction? Is this an isolated case? Are such manifestations possible in the future? What will be the further tactics of the Dudayev forces? I'm inclined to think that this is an exclusive case, and in the overall analysis doesn't indicate that all the unlawful formations will act in this manner. The 24 hours since the tragedy began in Budennovsk permitted Russian leadership to study the situation and give an assessment. The President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, issued a statement today. In it, it says, in Budennovsk, the Dudayev gunmen have committed a criminal action unprecedented in cruelty and cynicism. The tragedy in Budennovsk puts an end to discussions of the character of the former Dudayev regime. Now, everyone can see that the slogan of National Liberating War was only a cover-up for the criminals who got access to the weapons. The President said that currently all forces of the federal authorities are directed to disarm the terrorists, the immediate release of hostages, and to prevent similar actions in the future. Together with all Russians, the President grieves for those perished at the hands of the criminals and urges the citizens of Russia to remain calm and restrained, support the actions of the federal authorities in curbing the actions of the armed terrorists, and in restoring constitutional order. The Prime Minister, Chernomyrdin, interrupts his vacation and this evening returns to Moscow because of the tragic events in Budennovsk. It's presumed that Viktor Chernomyrdin will be in Moscow while Boris Yeltsin is absent because of his meeting with the G7 in Halifax. Immediately upon his return to Moscow, Viktor Chernomyrdin will hold a meeting on the situation in Budennovsk. The leadership of Russia is undertaking special measures to prevent Jahar Dudayev gunmen into neighboring regions. Here are some of those measures. Today in Sochi, the airport has been closed down. Other airports of the Northern Caucasus, previously closed because of the terrorist act, according to Interfax, are beginning to open. The planes will fly on schedule. Together with that, in order to provide security of the flights, still closed are the airports in Nazran and Vladikavkaz. Our correspondents report from Mineral Waters and Pitigorsk. 11:30 Moscow time on the 15th of June in the suburbs of the airport of Mineral Waters. There were no violations of public order. The airport is operating, planes are taking off, and the only inconvenience for passengers is a thorough inspection by the militia organs of the passengers, and the passengers have to walk 100 to 150 meters to reach the registration office. Since the beginning of the day, there were no interruptions in schedules of flights. The security and law enforcement services have undertaken all necessary measures to restrict access to the air terminal building of persons without flight tickets. The sad history of hostage cases in this airport, during the last 2 years it happened 4 times, justifies the strictest requirements of the special services. One of the most busy streets of Pyatigorsk in the International Customs Post area, according to the State Vehicle Inspection Federal Security Service, the night was calm without incident. Everything is calm now as well. Vehicle inspection is underway of those leaving the city and those arriving. What regards the situation in the city itself, all subdivisions of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, regiments of internal forces, the Federal Security Service are on combat alert. The entire operative situation in the Stavropol room is monitored. The question is how those comrades managed to get in. What is being done there is understood. This could have been expected, but the question is how did these people enter Budенnovsk, who let them through, and why wasn't the vehicle inspected? 2 KAMAZ trucks with weapons is not a trivial matter. The Committee of National Accord and the Government of National Rebirth of Chechnya condemned the terrorist act in Budенnovsk and expressed profound condolences to the families and friends of victims and injured, and stated that this gang of criminals committed the terrorist act, just as the entire Dudayev regime has nothing in common with the Chechen people. Organizational Committee preparing the Pan-Russian Unifying Cossack Circle, in the statement distributed today, warns that the repeat of an action such as in Budенnovsk by Dudayev and his circle could evoke such a wave of national rage and indignation with which neither the law enforcement organs nor the military will be able to deal. The Supreme Ottoman of the Great Fraternity, the Cossack Army, Kovalenko, stated that the terrorists were sent out warning that the Russian Cossacks would not allow their terrorist acts to go unreciprocated. The actions of the Cossacks, he emphasized, will be extremely effective and ruthless toward them because the criminals have placed themselves outside the law. The inhumane actions of the terrorists generate reciprocal ferociousness, but the Patriarch of Moscow and all Russia, Alexei II, admonishes individuals who capture hostages not to cause them harm and to release them all. And employees of law enforcement and the military of Russia, the Patriarch asks not to succumb to emotion and consider the right of each person for an impartial and just trial within the law. In connection with the threat of terrorist acts, security measures are being implemented in many cities of Russia, including Moscow. Although there are no alarming signals indicating the stirring of unlawful elements in the capital, luckily, yet the government of Moscow has approached Muscovites and guests not to be surprised at heightened inspections at the city vehicle police posts, especially upon entering and leaving the city. Despite threats ensuing from the Dudayev camp to transfer combat actions to Moscow streets, the capital of Russia continues to live at its usual pace. Respected Muscovites and guests of the capital, we invite you on a bus tour of the city. Incidentally, at the railway terminals, and militia teams are fortified with AMON squads, and from time to time, verification of documents is underway. A similar situation exists at the city vehicular authority posts at entry and exit points of the city. Vehicular transportation is periodically inspected. But the city rhythm of Moscow itself hasn't changed, and urgency is not an issue. Although here and there, suddenly, the alarming attentiveness is observed with which Muscovites follow information coming from Budенnovsk. According to the impression which was formed by our film crew during their tour of Moscow streets, Moscow is under the reliable protection of law enforcement organs. At the nuclear plants of Russia, measures have been undertaken to beef up security. This was stated by the Minister of Nuclear Energy, Viktor Mikhailov. When in December of last year I was told of the possibility of terrorist acts at nuclear objects, I completely excluded such an insane possibility, the minister told Interfax. However, now, according to him, the criminals, headed by Jahar Dudayev, are desperate and could resort to decisive acts. A special statement was issued on the events in Budенnovsk by the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, wherein it states, states, the crime in Budennovsk should finally open the eyes to reality of those political figures abroad who could not understand the true reasons for the Chechen tragedy and chose a moralizing stance toward Russia instead of active partnership support in fighting separatism and organized crime. The tragedy in Budennovsk again completely visibly confirmed the dire need for the most careful attention of the world community to the threat of terrorism, close consolidation of efforts of all countries in the battle with this evil of the 20th century. The main threat of terrorism for Russia yet ensues from the remains of the Dudayev regime. In Chechnya itself, there was no active combat activity. According to the command of the federal forces, blockaded in various parts of Chechnya are the scattered groups of gunmen and are engaged in sporadic clashes. The artillery of federal forces was firing in the area of Zany, large and small Varandy, and Nikikhata. In Bamuta, a group of gunmen from a dense forest was attempting to break through a position of the joint contingent, but was scattered. In the mountain gorges south of the regional center of Shatoy, combat continues. The armed formations of Islam Mazhadov for now have sufficient personnel and weapons in order to provide fierce resistance to the federal forces. Currently, combat technology of storming regiments is being still brought into the area, and the impassable forests and mountainous terrain complicates the combat. Serious firing support in the advance of the federal forces is provided by the aviation. However, for it, it's very difficult here. Currently, in the mountains, there is unbearable heat, which reduces the power of helicopters. Military pilots assert that these craft should have been written off long ago because they exhausted their motor resources. In the area of the populated point of Akhtur, by order of the commander of the Dudayev group, a certain Jabayev, 38 families have been executed who supported the new administration of the Republic, and also 8 gunmen who refused to participate in the combat. According to Itartas, Dudayevs are attempting to ascribe the mass execution to federal forces, portraying it as an evil deed of the Russian soldiers. Meanwhile, in the liberated areas of Chechnya, they're preparing for elections. What will the future parliament of Chechnya be named? The Supreme Soviet or the Republican Assembly? It's not known. In the opinion of many, it's not important because Chechnya will become a parliamentary republic, and that's most vital because events of the last years convincingly demonstrated that the presidential form of rule won't survive here. Considering the circumstance that between the executive and legislative branches of government differences could arise, it's proposed that the functions of the arbitration tribunal be conveyed to the representative of the President of Russia in Chechnya. And so the Committee of the National Accord named the official date of elections, the 5th of November of this year.